The National Industrial Court in Abuja has ordered the National Association of Resident Doctors to suspend its nationwide strike. The doctors embarked on the strike on the 1st of August over irregular payment of salaries, amongst other issues. The federal government instituted the suit against the association after several efforts to dialogue failed. It then asked the court for an order of interlocutory injunction restraining the doctors from continuing with the strike. Justice Tagema asked all parties in the suit to suspend all forms of hostilities and maintain status quo pending the hearing and determination of the motion. The case has now been adjourned to September 15th.
And for more on this update, let's turn to Dr. Mohammed Askira, who is the former president of the National Association of Resident Doctors. Well, he joins us now from Kano State. Thank you so much, Dr. Askira, for joining us tonight on the program. And of course, let's start with the fact that this judgment that has just come out today is the National Association of Resident Doctors. Are you going to comply with this order by the court?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigerians. Actually, the leadership of the NARD is still waiting to receive the communication from the said interlocutory injunction gotten. However, the status quo where we are today from the 2nd of August till today, what we know and what has been communicated was the initial summon, which they went to the court, the leadership, and the judge said he will not give any order until he heard from the resident doctors, which he gave 15th of September as the day for hearing. And since then, that is what it has been. But today, there are various type of reportage from different outlets interpreting what must have been said in the court today. But I'm sure the leadership of resident doctors will receive the appropriate communication and the appropriate interpretation, and from there we can see the way forward. However, this is not the biggest problem. One most important thing that Nigerians need to take from this dispute of Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors is that these are resident doctors who are the driving force of the healthcare delivery in our tertiary institution. They are the major healthcare-driven force in our tertiary hospital that render specialist care as they undergo intense training with their own trainers, the consultants, and they give the masses of Nigeria specialist care. These resident doctors are not asking for anything. They are asking for one thing, that their members have been working for months, some 3, some 5, some 7 months without pay. In some states, some have worked for 19 months without salary. That is the reason for the impasse, for the dispute. And they are not asking for anything. They just want their entitlements to be paid. And let me tell you the truth is, since they started this strike on 2nd, they resumed this strike on 2nd of August till date, the only reason why the strike has not made a headway is simply because the chief negotiator of the federal government, the arbitrator, has mismanaged the whole situation. I mean the Honorable Minister of Labor. These resident doctors, when they initially gave their ultimatum in January this year, they did not embark on strike until April this year. And when they embarked on the strike April this year, within the first 10 days of the strike, the Minister of Labor did well. He apprehended the strike. They sat down and had a memorandum of action. But let me tell you, the resident doctors, on their part, obeyed and obliged the memorandum of action and suspended their strike, thinking that the demands contained in that memorandum of action, the government side would go and do their own part.
Okay.
Since April.
Dr. Mohammed Askira, if I may just come in here, because we know some of these facts are, before the public domain. But the issue here is the suffering of Nigerians. It's, the hiccup that's the vaccination process of COVID-19 and even the treatment is presently going through now. How conscientious are your members, again, against the backdrop of the alarm that the federal government has raised over cholera outbreak in the country? that is persistent?
That is even the reason why the resident doctors, out of respect for the NMA president, agreed to go back to the negotiation table. Since they started the strike for over 20 days, the first time the Minister of Health called them for negotiation since 2nd of August was on Friday. And they went together with the national president of NMA, and we had 48 hours of engagement. And they made concessions because they are conscious of the sufferings of Nigerians. They made concessions, they agreed, they renegotiated things that they have already agreed and government reneged. They agreed that they will even take some of these items that was discussed to their members, and NMA will prevail and convince them so that they will consider because of the sufferings of Nigerians. Unfortunately, at the end of the discussion, because we were made to understand that the president mandated the Minister of Labor to renegotiate by removing technicalities that are bottlenecks that prevented the reconciliation. And to our surprise, after more than 48 hours of discussion, we discovered that the Minister of Labor, by omission or commission, only God knows his own reason, he had already inserted a very big bottleneck, a technicality of no work, no pay, that even if they suspended their strike, they would not be paid August salary. Who on earth could be negotiating and be taking such a stance? And you think that really that person is interested in solving the problem. The sincere truth is that we do not believe that the president of this country, a respected elder statesman like President Buhari, will tell him to remove technicalities and still tell him don't pay them August salary. That is conflicting, and that makes the resident doctors to even further have distrust in the whole process of the negotiation. So as I'm talking to you today, if not because of the stance of the no work, no pay that the Minister of Labor said he has invoked and he must ensure it happened, by now I'm sure the resident doctors might by now be talking with their members to convince them on the recent MOA that was convoked under the leadership of the enemy. But because of what he brought, an extraneous, completely different situation that he brought into the dispute, it was the reason why the negotiation broke down in the weekend, day before yesterday.
Right.
So
now, that negotiation did break down. Dr. Mohammed Askira, okay, we're struggling. Okay, you can hear us now. For the fact that the chief negotiator of this entire process happens to be a doctor, the Minister of Health is a medical doctor, and the immediate past Minister of Health, Professor Adewale, he was also a president of NAT that actually held on. And you know what? But for the fact that we're seeing doctors like yourself, you know, not really adhering to agreements that you've made at the expense of the Nigerian life, is quite worrisome. But at the end of the day, negotiations are ongoing and offers have been made to NAT. So what is wrong with the offer being made by the federal government and the negotiating team with what you're asking for? What is wrong with it? Why are you not accepting it?
There's nothing like not accepting. It is the minister that is now the stumbling block, the Minister of Labor. Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, he is the one that prevented that negotiation from succeeding. Because after more than 48 hours of discussion, he, at the end of the day, said he's going to victimize the resident doctors for asking for their rights. And the leadership told him truthfully that if this is what we are going to do, we can hardly take this concession. Despite the fact that they made concession, they agreed to renegotiate what the government agents and agencies had reneged. After the April Memorandum of Action, the leadership of NAT had agreed to make new concession because the NMA leadership had waded in. The Minister of Health now said he has already invoked a victimization of these resident doctors that have gone on strike, that he will not pay them their August salary. As a chief negotiator, he has failed to call them for a meeting. Since they started this strike for over 20 days, he did not call them for a meeting. The first meeting that was called at the instance, he said, at the instance of the president of this country to remove all technicalities, while the enemy president waded in, that was the first meeting. They made concession because they are conscious of the sufferings of Nigeria. The Minister of Labor now introduced an entirely different dimension that broke down the whole negotiation by saying he's going to victimize them. So the resident doctor said that there is no way President Buhari will tell you that he wants to remove the sufferings of Nigeria, and the same President Buhari will tell you that go and punish these resident doctors. So they found that there is a lot of, a conflicting position by the Honorable Minister of Labour, and the current strike as it is going on, it is because of the Minister of Labour's stance.
Mohammed Askira, just an individual seems to be making this situation snowball at the expense of the lives of Nigerians at stake here. And that was why I asked that question. NMA, your parent body, had provided a middle ground than the rest. So are you going to adhere to that middle ground? And like my colleague asked earlier, are you going to obey the court order issued today?
Provided has already been spoiled by the Honorable Minister of Labour, because he said they will come back and he will victimize them. It's just like telling me that come back home. When you come back home, I'm going to slaughter you. Who will come back to that home? Come back home, I will slaughter you. That is the position of the Minister of Labour. And we told him, the resident doctors told him, that can never be the stand of the president of this country, because the president of this country loves Nigerians. That's why he told him and mandated him to remove all technicalities so that the resident doctors will come back to work. The resident doctors, out of respect for the president of Nigeria, out of respect for the NMA president, decided to make concession that they will take to go and convince their members. But unfortunately, the Labour minister now said when they go and convince their members, as they come back, he will not pay them salaries of August. So they said, if that is the situation...
Askira, it's really quite painful looking at the situation of the resident doctors and the fact that we're even seeing brain drain. A lot of Nigerian doctors are moving to other climes for greener pastures. But we are in court right now. And of course, like you have said, we'll wait for the official stance of the National Association of Resident Doctors concerning the court order issued today. But in the meantime, we'd have to say thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program, Dr. Mohammed Askira, all the way from Kano there.